morning, everybody. So here today, I'm here to talk about where is LoRaWAN today. And I think as you saw from the video, the answer that you see in this hall is everywhere. Whether we're talking about public, private, mobile, or even satellite networks, the ubiquity of LoRaWAN is growing worldwide. With over 123 public networks covering more than 80 countries today, growth is ahead of us. And we're seeing increasing levels of innovation as we go forward, with the emergence of networks like the Helium network in the US, which I'm announcing for the first time today, provides full support for LoRaWAN endpoints across the 3,800 gateways they have, covering the more than 10 major cities in the US. And the innovation doesn't stop there. We're seeing the emergence of more and more private networks, providing coverage for private, industrial, enterprise-based solutions, as well as home-based solutions. And the emergence of mobile gateways, providing infill coverage for LoRaWAN solutions across the supply chain, be it in trucks or on the open ocean, as I think you saw yesterday. And it's extending even to satellite, with the emergence of satellite networks like the Lacuna network and FleetSpace, launching cost-effective, low Earth orbit satellites, providing global coverage for LoRaWAN solutions. And so in many ways, while we like to think in the IoT that we're sort of at the beginning, and I think we've been talking about being at the beginning for many years now, where we as developers are looking at, we're just beginning to realize the enormous potential of massive IoT solutions to truly change the way in which we live, work, and play. In many ways, we're already there, with over 500,000 gateways deployed worldwide, providing coverage for more than 2 billion endpoints potentially. And what happens when you innovate? What happens when you enable solution developers to build value? Well, they come up with solutions to problems that people have struggled with for decades. Solutions for problems in the energy and utility space, whether those are to do with grid safety and grid management, energy efficiency, or resource utilization. Solutions in the smart city space that improve the way in which communities live and in the way in which they, again, consume resources. Solutions in the smart home and building space, which affect everything from elderly care to connectivity in the home to security. Solutions in the connected insurance space, again, in the enterprise space, in the home space. Logistics and transportation, we touched on those. You can see many solutions in the hall today. And in many ways, LoRaWAN is ideally suited for tracking objects in a low-cost way. We're not talking about the pinpoint accuracy of locating a pet, for example, but being able to understand where assets are as they flow through a supply chain is a fundamental change in the way in which businesses operate. To solutions in the smart farming space, and again, whether it's oil palm plantations or dairy herds, one of the main things that we as a human race face is how do we improve the efficiency of our agricultural systems? How do we stop some of the damage that we're creating to the future planet that we leave for our children? And LoRaWAN is one of many tools that's absolutely critical in that mix to provide better information and drive better decisions about how we consume resources. And the list is literally endless. I mean, I've walked around this hall yesterday, and I was here last year and the year before, and every year I'm astounded by the range of solutions that I see and the new ideas that you have come up with. And I think that creativity shows what happens when you enable an ecosystem of developers with easy-to-use tools. They come up with amazing solutions to problems that we all face. And so far, these solutions have seen about 135 million LoRa-enabled sensors deployed worldwide. But that's really just a drop in the ocean when it comes to the opportunity which the massive IoT represents. And when I say massive IoT, I mean solutions that collect thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of low-cost, low-powered sensors, driving more and more data into ever more powerful analytics solutions. We heard a lot yesterday about the role of machine learning in that innovation and artificial intelligence. And we know, of course, about the emergence of extremely powerful cloud solutions for IoT. But the problem really is, if you don't have data, it doesn't really matter how powerful those analytics solutions are. And in many ways, the promise of the IoT was always the ubiquity of data, the ability to collect data from everything, and to use that data to drive better decisions. Now, of course, opinions about the size of this market vary. I mean, I think we've seen the billions and the billions of predictions, but if you think about the roughly 8 billion human beings on this planet, whether they're surrounded by just billions or tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of connected devices, maybe even the 500 billion that Cisco forecast, I think you'll all agree that the opportunity ahead of us to really change things is really, really quite massive. And we're just at the beginning of that. So what is Semtech doing about this? You know, our role in this ecosystem is as a provider of tools and capabilities. It's to serve you. It's to enable you to do the things that you see ahead of you, the problems that you can solve. And last year I first outlined our strategy. And our strategy really is very simple. It's to simplify the technology, and it's to focus. And when we say, that's the right one. And when we say simplify, what does that actually mean? I mean, you hear the word simplify all the time, and it seems like in the last 5 years or so, simplify is the thing that you say when you talk about developer tools. Everyone says simplify. Most of the time, simple things actually aren't quite that simple when you dig into them. But from our perspective, what simplify means is make it easier to develop hardware solutions. Building hardware is hard. Making sensors work, particularly in a footprint-constrained, power-constrained model, is extremely difficult. And it requires a very specialized set of skills today if you're working on the bare metal. So for us, simplifying hardware development means abstracting some of that complexity away through software, largely, and through services, so that more and more developers can actually access the power that LoRaWAN puts in their hands. That you don't have to be an embedded specialist, of which the number is not growing very rapidly, and some would argue in many economies dwindling, but to enable developers who come from different backgrounds to use LoRaWAN, to enable developers who come from a mobile application development background or a cloud application development background to develop their own hardware solutions. And secondly, it's about creating more accessibility through developer tools, through capabilities and connections that enable the ecosystem to find out how to address problems and how to deliver value. And what that really means in substance is firstly, in the range of products that we're delivering. Now, Semtech used to be a hardware company. That was what we did. We delivered silicon. And over the course of the last 2 years, I think you've seen the emergence of a range of different capabilities that is all about simplifying. It's all about simplifying the development process. The first is optimizing LoRa. We started with the basic foundation, the basic capabilities. And let's remember, we've only been at this as a community for 5 years, 6 years? So we started by laying down the basic foundations of connectivity. But we're moving towards providing more and more optimized LoRa hardware solutions. As we learn, as we hear from you what you need, and as we see the market develop, we're very focused on following that market and making sure that we're delivering tools that support the problems that you're trying to solve in an easy-to-use way. And that's meant this year releasing products like the LoRa Smart Home product, which is a cost-optimized solution targeted at smart home solutions that reach through the home, into the garden, into the street outside, providing flexibility, range, and security in a way that the available solutions previously, FSK, Zigbee, and others, are simply incapable of doing. It's solutions like the Core Cell Gateway design that we released earlier this year, based on our new SX1302 chip, designed to enable lower cost gateway solutions, lower power gateway solutions, tailored to indoor environments. Again, to extend the reach of networks into hard to reach places. It includes a move towards software-defined hardware. And again, rather like simplify, everyone says software-defined hardware. That's software-defined everything these days. But what does that actually mean for Semtech? Well, you heard some of the discussion yesterday about our modem products. And that's really the first step in a series of steps that you'll see emerging over the next year based around a modem format. And that's all about making hardware accessible to an audience that doesn't know or doesn't care about how the base metal functions, that wants a clean application surface to work with, and most of all, a managed endpoint, where application developers can focus all of their effort on building a solution to the problem and not worrying about how the data is packetized, not worrying about how the data is streamed to the endpoint, not worrying about security and manageability. And that's something that you'll continue to see more and more of. And it's also moving towards what will be the next generation of LoRa silicon. Software-enabled hardware that will introduce, for the first time in the industry, GPS and Wi-Fi-enabled location services from a single chip design. And that's something, again, that you'll see evolve over the coming years. And that evolution is going to be driven by, well, it's going to be driven by you. We're extremely focused, as I'll talk about later, on how we develop our product. And we spend most of our time listening. And you need to tell us what you need, because you're the ones out there talking to customers. You're the ones out there building solutions. Our job is simply to provide the tools that enable you to do so. And we've also introduced this year a totally reinvigorated developer ecosystem. Developer training well, developer training can be good or bad. Developer training can be dry, stale, and not related to the real world, or it can actually be focused on real world problems. It can actually connect developers. And so what you've seen this year is the launch of a completely invigorated LoRa Academy that's open and free to all, that we're very keen to syndicate and drive into multi-languages across the globe. You've seen the emergence of a catalog of tools and capabilities, a single point to find reference solutions and development kits, and a single gateway to a world of solution developers, solution providers, and ultimately customers. And you've also seen us deliver cloud services. We talked about cloud services on stage last year, and I talked about the geolocation service that we had already launched. A network-centric geolocation service which takes the complexity of absorbing TDOA, RSSI, and SNR data and converting it into a location. And that was designed with a very simple goal. LoRaWAN is ideally suited to locating assets. Again, not the pinpoint accuracy of GPS, but the perfect balance between power and accuracy that most of the solutions I see in this hall require in some form or other. But until we released the geolocation service, that work was left to each of you to figure out how to do it. And it's both complex and time-consuming, but also fundamentally just an ingredient into an application. It's not the application itself. And so we launched a cloud service which took that complexity and turned it into an API call. And we launched that over a year ago now. Through the course of this last year gone, we've also launched a join server in June last year, actually. Initially integrated with the TTN network server, just about to launch the Actility network server, and we're in the process of integrating all of the other major network servers. And that's based on a very simple belief. What the ecosystem needs and what device manufacturers need is a network and a network server agnostic join server that makes it possible to build one SKU for a geography. That makes it possible for a device to be shipped to Europe rather than to a specific country or specific network, and for that device to phone home when it's connected and understand which network it's meant to be connected to and pull down those credentials in a very simple and very cost-effective way. And we also launched device and application services, the first step toward delivering a suite of device management capabilities, again, designed to simplify the process of provisioning devices, of pushing firmware updates, of ensuring that devices are secured, ensuring that you can easily understand the status of a device, the power level, how it's functioning. And again, based on a very simple belief those capabilities just need to exist. They need to be extremely cost effective, they need to be extremely efficient, and they just need to be there. Because you all need those capabilities. And if each of you has to go through the process of developing them yourself, or taking on the overhead of an expensive service that ties you to a provider, that's probably not going to be optimal in the long run. Because one thing that we also believe, as I think most of you do, lock-in is bad. We have to create an environment where devices can roam across networks, where devices aren't tied down, where applications aren't tied down, and most importantly, where customers have choice. And finally, we've also moved aggressively toward enabling the innovation of the hardware ecosystem through licensing deals with partners like STMicro, who you've seen today, and talking about the SoC, which I think is truly, truly groundbreaking yesterday, and I think will unlock another wave of innovation in the LoRaWAN ecosystem and actually enable the entire STM32 ecosystem to access LoRaWAN without actually having to go through the motions of learning the detail. And we're going to continue that because we think that, Semtech, we've built the basics, but the innovation that is out there in the hardware ecosystem, the ability to understand different problems in different markets, well, that's not something that we can do. And it's something that we are committed to enabling going forward. And when I say focus, well, what does that mean? Focus, kind of focus on growth, really, I suppose. That's probably the main thing. Because from our perspective, the more that we can enable you to go out and build solutions, the more power that LoRaWAN has and the more change that we're affecting as an ecosystem. And focus means several things. The first, and in some ways perhaps the simplest, is focus on driving awareness. Out there in the wide world, you may be surprised to know, there are many customers who do not know what LoRaWAN is. I'm sure you come across them every single day. And we see as part of our responsibility in the ecosystem of Semtech to broadcast far and wide the benefits that LoRaWAN can provide. Why? Very simple. So that you don't have to waste time explaining to your customers what LoRaWAN is or the strengths and capabilities that it brings. So that you can spend time talking to your customers or your partners about the problems that they've got and about the solutions that you can provide. And a part of that awareness drive is also lead generation, which again is a responsibility that we take very seriously. That's creating and identifying opportunities for the ecosystem, for you. We're not a solution provider. That's not what we do, that's what you do. But in the process of generating awareness, we're very focused, and you'll see developments in this through the course of this year. We're very focused on creating lead generation that we can feed through to the ecosystem, accelerating the process of connecting a customer with a problem with a provider who can answer that problem. Again, to drive more value, to enable LoRaWAN to deliver more to the ecosystem as a whole. We're also focused on understanding what we need to deliver and actually moving toward a model of software-enabled hardware. There's an ulterior motive for that. And that ulterior motive is it enables us to react more rapidly. It enables us to deliver innovation and change without changing the silicon layer, because changing the silicon layer takes time. There are some practical realities that are hard to avoid in developing new silicon platforms. So the new silicon platform I talked about earlier, part of that purpose is to create a foundation on which we can deliver more capabilities through software, through firmware, and through services to which that device is connected and tuned. Not locked, connected. But we need you for that. We need to understand what it is that you need, what it is that LoRaWAN is not doing that needs today. If you look at LoRa Smart Home, and if you look at some of the developments that we, as members of the LoRa Alliance, are discussing around peer-to-peer to reduce latency, that's the perfect example of market-driven innovation. That's us listening and hearing, hey, for indoor locations, for smart home locations, for those sorts of solutions serving those environments, there needs to be a lower latency option. We need to address this, and we need to do so quite quickly. You saw us talk about 2.4 yesterday, which is not LoRaWAN, LoRa 2.4. But it's the next wave of innovation. It's looking at whether whether there's a place for a higher bandwidth solution that provides ubiquitous coverage. Because one of the messages we've heard time and time again is, LoRaWAN is really powerful in my geography, but my customer has to ship something from the US to Europe. What do I do? And the complexity of listen before talk in the US, how do I deal with that? So we're dependent upon you, and we spend a very great deal of our time out in the ecosystem, talking with customers, learning what's required, and delivering it. And to be honest with you, if we're not delivering what you need, tell us. We depend upon your feedback, and we'll take that feedback and we'll move as rapidly as we can. Thirdly, we're very focused on growing the ecosystem, as you all are. But really, that focus is on kind of recruiting. It's recruiting both more solution providers and bringing more folks into the family. And you've seen the emergence of several large names coming into the LoRaWAN ecosystem in the course of the last year. And the endorsement of companies like Intel, like Amazon, like Cisco is very important for our customers, for your customers, because it shows credibility and it shows longevity and it shows you that LoRaWAN is here to stay. But there are also other communities that we need to reach out to. The systems integrator community, in many ways the last mile to your customers, to the Fortune 500 customers. Systems integrators who inform both the purchase decision, but also drive larger scale digitization programs, of which LoRaWAN is just one tool. It's one part, and it needs to play that part well. So we're drawing in those systems integrators and bringing them into the family. And secondly, cloud platform providers. As the intro mentioned, I mean, that's the background I come from. LoRaWAN, quite literally, is the missing link that 500 plus IoT cloud platforms have been looking for. It doesn't matter how good your cloud platform is. You can't connect data, and if you can't connect all the data, all the devices in a cost-effective way, the value of that solution is always going to be limited. And so we're very focused on firstly educating cloud platform providers about the benefits that LoRaWAN can deliver, and you'd be surprised by the number of cloud platform providers who've never heard about LoRaWAN, but bringing them into the ecosystem as equal participants. And then finally, we're extremely focused, as many of you are, on the LoRa Alliance. I mean, the LoRa Alliance, to me, I've been in many kind of technology ecosystems and the growth of those ecosystems. I've never seen an alliance or an ecosystem grow as rapidly as the LoRa Alliance has. The fact that it's achieved such a scale and actually achieved such a maturity in such a short period of time is nothing short of miraculous. And it's the way in which we can ensure interoperability, that we can ensure standards and certification. And again, why is that important? Interoperability, well, that's obvious. Everything needs to work with everything else. Otherwise, that's just pain for you. You spend more time doing integrations and custom integrations that break each time there's an innovation. But also, it's about credibility. It's about customers knowing when they're building an industrial IoT solution that's there for the next 30 years, and knowing that LoRaWAN is going to be there, an open standard that they can work with, and a multitude of providers that can answer the needs that they have. And so what of the future? What of all those billions of devices? Are we there yet? Well, nearly. After all, we've built the foundation. Hardware, systems, tools. We've built the enablers. They're already there. Developer training, services, software. And we're moving towards an era of mass adoption. And I think you've heard that over this last day or two. And I've certainly seen it, where the customers that we're talking to today, they were talking about 1,000 device deployment. They were talking about POCs. They were talking about experimentation. Now it's tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions. And we're moving into a space where actually in remarkable speed, we've gone from being a fledgling technology to a fully mature one that can enable billions of devices globally and that can enable solutions which do truly change the way in which we live and work and play everywhere. Thank you all. You want me to do Q&A? I can do Q&A.
Of course, yes. You don't leave without any questions. Please, yeah, we
sure.
still have some time for that.
Good.
Let me just kick off with that, because you showed a remarkable number, 135 million connected devices, which is huge.
Yep.
When you were here on stage last year, you said 80 million?
Yes.
If it will be a straight line, we can say, well, 200 million connected devices, but as you say, it's exponential. So can you give a rough estimate of how many connected devices you will be showing here when we're here next year?
I've given up trying to estimate. It grows so quickly, I've given up trying to estimate, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, and from our perspective, I'd actually turn the question back to the crowd and say, how many do you see? How many do you see?
Estimates?
Bet numbers. I don't know. I think the opportunity is there. I mean, there is demand in the marketplace for many hundreds of millions of devices. But really, at the end of the day, it's not about devices. It's about the solutions that those devices enable. And I think most of what will drive that growth is mostly to do with speed of execution. It's not about creating or identifying more opportunity. It's about enabling this ecosystem to move more rapidly to fulfill that opportunity. As I said, it's not really about devices. It's about the solutions they enable and the value of those solutions. And I think if you look into the customer space now, the demand is there. The demand has been there for the last decade, frankly. Now we can service it.
Of course. Well, it was a stupid question, but that's the moderator rule. If you start out with a stupid question, there's always somebody in the audience who thinks, well, I have a much better question. So any questions for Alistair? No, we still need to wake up, I think. Okay, thank you very much. Alistair Fulton.
Okay.